Well, good morning. It is great to be out of New York City and with God's people. And you know, my office is calling me right now in New York. We're just not going to be able to take that call right now. I am so excited to be here, and we're going to have a great time of fellowship this morning, and hopefully you will laugh, and hopefully if you want to holler, you can holler. You know, I'm Southern Baptist, but I actually went to Lee University, which is a Church of God school. I don't speak in tongues, but I have known to jump a few pews. But don't worry, I won't do that today. And I'm excited to be here at Truett-McConnell because you guys are doing something, and folks are talking about you. I don't know if you guys know this, but folks are talking about you all across our great Southern Baptist convention. I mean, you know, our convention was rescued from the hands of liberal theology back in the 70s and 80s and flourished. And it's so exciting to see what God is doing here in this place, raising up a new generation of young Christian Southern Baptist college students. And I'm excited about what God is doing here in the mountains of North Georgia. And also understand that a dear man of God and probably one of the greatest pastors I know, Dr. John Yarbrough, is here with his wife, and I've known him for 20 some odd years. And Dr. Yarbrough, it's so great to see you again. And I understand that Gerald Harris is here, who is the executive editor of, quite frankly, and I'm going to get in trouble here, but I believe the Christian Index is the greatest Baptist news publication in the United States of America. And I'm excited to meet him, hopefully after our time here this morning. But it is great to be back in the South. I flew in from New York City, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of great stuff about New York City, but there's some stuff that I just don't understand. And I'll get to that in just a few moments. But one of the first things I saw as I was driving on Interstate 85, I saw a Waffle House, a Cracker Barrel, a big sign that said Jesus Saves, and a Chick-fil-A. And I think we can all agree here that Chick-fil-A is the official chicken of Jesus. You know, I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, where the tea is sweet and the chicken is fried and the biscuits are buttered. But up in New York City, the tea is not sweet, the chicken is not fried, and the biscuits are called bagels. I want to tell y'all a story about my first day at Fox News Channel. Right around the corner from the Fox News corner of the world, there's this little place we all go for lunch and for breakfast. It's called the Dirty Deli. It's not very clean, but it's cheap. And so I love sausage biscuits. And I'm especially fond of Hardee's sausage biscuits, but in a pinch, I'll do McDonald's. But anyway, we're at the Dirty Deli, and I went in there, and I said, I like a sausage biscuit. And the guy looks at me, and he goes, I know not of this biscuit that you speak of. And I said, well, it's a biscuit, and you got a piece of sausage, and you put it together, and it's a sausage biscuit. He goes, well, we don't have those here. I said, well, what do you got? I'm hungry. And he goes, well, we have bagels. I said, what the heck is a bagel? And so he pulls out this thing, kind of looks like a hockey puck, and to be honest, kind of tasted like one. So I said, okay, I'm hungry, I'll take one. So the guy looks at me, honest to goodness, he says, do you want me to smear your bagel? I said, you want to do what to my bagel? I said, buddy, I'm from the South. You don't smear another guy's bagel where I come from. So I don't know, I just don't understand. So I live in this place called in Brooklyn called Williamsburg, and now you people may know my neighbors. They call them the hipsters. This is like where the hipsters live, and I like the hipsters. They're really not. You guys know who I'm talking about, the skinny jeans people, and they wear the T-shirts, you know, that they could buy at Goodwill for $5, but they go to the stores and buy for like $40 or $50. But those are the hipsters. Very nice people. They got the mustaches, you know, they handle our things, all that. So anyway, I really want to. Let's be honest, when you look at me, I kind of like ooze Republican or Baptist, you know? And so I kind of want to fit in. I kind of stand out in my neighborhood with the hipsters. So I was talking to the fashion department at Fox News Channel, and I was trying to explain to them my problem, my predicament. And they said, well, Todd, what you got to do is you got to go buy yourself some skinny jeans. Now, you know, the general rule of thumb is you need to be skinny if you're going to wear skinny jeans. It took a tub of butter and a shoehorn to get me in those things. It was not a good look for me. So I'm just kind of who I am. But I do want to tell you a couple of stories. I happen to be a member of the National Rifle Association. Any NRA folks out here? All right, we got a few folks. All right. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, but a Glock is a heck of a lot more effective than when you get mugged. So anyway, when you join the NRA, they give you a black ball cap, and it's got the gold letters NRA, on the front. And so when I joined the NRA, I received one of those in the mail. And according to my mailman, I'm also the only person in Brooklyn who subscribes to Garden and Gun magazine, which is a great magazine, by the way. So anyway, in my neighborhood, all the liberal groups, they ask you for money, like on the weekends. It's kind of like that scene in the old parody movie, Airplane, and where the Hare Krishners are out there, and you got the liberal groups, PETA. Oh God, Lord, the PETA people. So let me tell you what happened, because I eat meat, and so I'm coming out of the supermarket, and the PETA people are very aggressive. And, I'm Baptist, so I try to be, nice and polite, but Lord love them, they just don't know when to stop. So anyway, I figured out how to stop the PETA people from asking money. And so one day I was walking out of the supermarket, I had a big old pork butt in my bag, and I think they could tell because they stopped me in my tracks and said, "Sir, do you love animals?" And I said, "Only if they're deep fried," and kept on walking. So, never bothered me again. But it's interesting. Whenever I wear that NRA ball cap, it's like the parting of the Red Sea. Nobody asked me for money, so I sent the NRA $25 and asked for another hat. I'm one of those people that President Obama talked about back in 2007. You might have remembered this. He was in San Francisco, and he talked about people who cling to their guns and their religion. You guys remember that? He said that we were bitter Americans. Well, brothers and sisters, I want to clear something up this morning. I'm proud to call myself a gun-toting, chicken-eating, Bible-clinging son of a Baptist, and I'm not bitter, I'm blessed. Now, a lot of people ask me what it's like to work at Fox News, and it really is an honor to work with those folks. And Dr. Kaner, I didn't realize this was going to be a Comedy Central roast, but thank you. By the way, they're apparently going to be roasting Justin Bieber. I normally don't watch that show, but I just might have to tune in for that. But it's a great place to work. And I want to tell you two quick stories before I get into the heart of what I want to share with you this morning. One of the coolest people I got to interview was Paula Deen. I know we have some folks here from Savannah, but I just love Paula Deen. That woman can do stuff with butter that'll just make your head spin. And anyway, Paula's a big hugger. And so I was interviewing her at Fox News, and the most interesting thing happened. After our interview, she come over and she says, "Come here, sugar." And so she gives you a big old bear hug. She smells just like a butter cookie. Honest to goodness. Now, the other thing is President Obama. Back in 2000, the first time he was running for president, I was the embedded reporter. So I had to travel with the president. He was then, of course, Senator Obama, and I was the guy that was assigned to travel with him. And I always like to have a small study Bible with me, and I lost my Bible. And of course, in New York City, we don't have any Chick-fil-A's, and we certainly don't have any Christian bookstores. It really is a God-forsaken place. And so I had to go to the regular bookstore to get a Bible. And so they go, "Oh, yeah, we can help you out." So they take me back there, and they go, "Here you go." And they handed me a copy of the Quran. And I'm like, "No, I'm a Baptist." And so then I get like a Hebrew text, and I'm like, "No, I'm a Southern Baptist." And so finally they get around to finding the Bibles. And the only kind of Bible they had were those huge Bibles that you write the family lineage in, that actually have pictures of Adam and Eve. You guys know what I'm talking about. Your grandparents have them. So I'm like, well, I've got to have a Bible, so I'll take that Bible. So I want you to imagine the scene when I meet up with the Obama campaign. There's the big jetliner out on a tarmac in Iowa, beautiful cornfield, and there's a big ramp coming up the back of the plane. So here I show up with my Fox News hat, my Fox News shirt, and I've got this honking big Bible, and I'm carrying it like this. And since y'all are Baptists, you'll appreciate this. As I was walking up the steps, I started singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers." So that's kind of my Obama story. You know, I tell people stories about faith. I tell our stories to the country at Fox News. I do that through my radio commentaries and through my column and through my television appearances. And I want the world to know what Christians are really all about. And just a few weeks ago, I had the honor of being at the Passion Conference in Atlanta and watching thousands and thousands of young people just like yourselves, some of you may have been in that audience, worshiping God with a band. And how about this beautiful worship time that we had this morning? I wish I could take you guys back to New York City with me. Wow, that's awesome. This is something special. That doesn't happen everywhere. I tell those stories to the nation. When you turn on the TV, many times when people talk about Christianity or evangelicals, they'll show pictures of Westboro Baptist Church or people doing horrible things. But I'm here to tell you that God is doing amazing things. The body of Christ is truly changing our nation. But today, I stand here before you to sound a warning. Because, brothers and sisters, I truly believe there is a war on religious liberty in the United States of America. And this war is not targeting people of the Muslim faith. It's not targeting people of the Hindu or Jewish or Buddhist faith. This war on religious liberty is targeting people of the Christian faith. My new book, God Bless America, is a compilation of evidence that I believe demands a verdict. Rick Warren told me in my office that he believes the issue of religious liberty will be the civil rights issue of our generation. You just think about that for a moment. What happened during the civil rights movement of the 1960s? Christians gathered and engaged in acts of civil disobedience for their rights. Think about that when you hear Rick Warren say, religious liberty, the idea that we can go to church, that we can hold to a certain set of beliefs. We may, in our lifetime, be forced to sit in a jail cell because of that. Listen to this quote from Tim Shaw. He's from Georgetown University's Religious Freedom Project. Threats to religious liberty are mounting, he says. It won't be long before great religious institutions in this country are stripped of their tax-exempt status, and we will be in a very different social, legal, and political environment in about 10 years. As I mentioned to you, I live in Brooklyn, New York, just about a half a mile from the Barclays Arena where the Nets play basketball, and also it was a place where the word twerking was introduced into the national lexicon. I had just finished writing God Bless America, and I was trying to figure out a way to bring it all together, or writing my introduction. And it was about that time that Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty, who was one of my great heroes of the faith, got himself in a world of trouble because he dared share his beliefs and what the Bible said about traditional marriage. Got destroyed in the media because of that. And it was also about that time that Miley Cyrus was doing her deed on that arena in front of God and country. And you know, I was sitting there one day at brunch at a coffee house there in Brooklyn, and I started thinking about something, and you guys may sort of feel like I do. I sort of feel like a Duck Dynasty guy living in a Miley Cyrus world, and quite frankly, Washington, D.C. is twerking on all of us. So this morning, sorry for that visual, it's kind of early. This morning, I want to walk you through some areas that I believe are coming under fierce attack, but then I want to wrap this up with some hope, because we serve a risen Savior. And we don't tell people about the bad news, we tell them about the good news. So you hang on to that. But first, I want to tell you what's happening in our country. First, in the United States military. Over the past 6 years, the greatest fighting force on the planet has been turned into a social engineering petri dish. One rear admiral told a gathering in Washington, D.C., that officers in the United States military are being told to hide their faith in Jesus Christ. They're not even allowed to have a Bible on their desk. There was an incident where Baptist chaplains were fired from a chaplaincy program. You want to know why? Because they dared pray in the name of Jesus. You say, well, that's happening somewhere else. Let me tell you what's happening in y'all's neck of the woods. North Georgia College. Just a few weeks ago, I wrote a story about a chaplain based out of Fort Benning, and he was leading a suicide prevention workshop at North Georgia College. He was reprimanded by military officials because in this chaplaincy program, in this meeting that he was leading about suicide prevention, he mentioned religious sources for the soldiers to go to if they were having suicidal thoughts. And the military told this chaplain that was against the rules. That if someone is about to kill themselves, if someone is about to put a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger, they cannot mention Jesus Christ as a way to stop and save that soldier's life, because that's against the rules. And this chaplain was punished, written up, because he mentioned religion. Imagine that. A Christian chaplain getting in trouble for offering Christian advice. That's the country we live in, folks. Bibles were banned at Walter Reed Medical Center. It was only changed after lawmakers on Capitol Hill stood up and denounced this rule that banned the Word of God from entering into a medical hospital. One day I received an email from a soldier. I get a lot of emails from soldiers. This particular soldier was on a forward operating base in Afghanistan. They had a little makeshift chapel there. He said, "Mr. Starnes, I'm sending you some pictures. I want you to see what they're doing to our chapel." He was heartbroken. There in the sands of Afghanistan, this desert, the military had ordered the Christian cross to be removed from the chapel. But they weren't stopping there. The glass on the chapel doors was shaped like a cross too. So they were ordered to remove those doors from the hinges and to replace those doors because someone might be offended at the sight of a cross. And I remember the story of old Sergeant Philip Monk. He's a first sergeant. Those guys are tough. Old Sergeant Monk, he's a tough-looking character. Bald head, built like a tank, but just a soft, sweet, gentle spirit of a man. One day he was called in by his lesbian commander there at Lackland Air Force Base, and he was ordered by his commander to disclose his private view on gay marriage. Sergeant Monk is a fellow Southern Baptist. He's a brother Baptist. And he said, "Ma'am, I cannot answer that question." She said, "You will answer that question." And he did not. Sergeant Monk was demoted right there on the spot, simply for holding to a belief. This is what's happening in the military. But it's not just the military, it's also happening in public schools. You might recall about what happened in Lincoln, Nebraska. For the sake of gender inclusivity, they sent out an email to school teachers, and some of you in this room may become school teachers one day. You may be faced with this issue. The teachers were ordered to stop using offensive words to describe the boys and girls. Now, I can only imagine what they called the kids, because I was not exactly a good child growing up. As a matter of fact, when I got saved and I was baptized, my mother asked the preacher to hold me under for a few extra minutes just to make sure the sin got washed away. So I can only imagine what they were calling the kids. So what in the world were the offensive words that they wanted the teachers to stop using? Well, they told these teachers in Lincoln, Nebraska, you're no longer allowed to call the kids boys or girls, or ladies and gentlemen, because that might offend someone who is not a boy or a girl or a lady or a gentleman. Well, if you're not supposed to use ladies or gentlemen or boys and girls, what are you supposed to call the kids, the students? According to the memorandum that went out, they suggested that the teachers call these young people purple penguins. Purple, but I'm not kidding, purple penguins. So that got me to thinking, on this whole issue of gender inclusivity. I was kind of wondering what the gender inclusive word for stupid is, because I got a whole mess of it in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then there's a school in Ventura, California, the local high school booster club trying to raise money to buy the kids football uniforms. And so the local Chick-fil-A owner said, you know what, we're going to give you 200 chicken sandwich dinners and you can sell them. Do whatever, keep all the profits, go buy those uniforms. Here's the chicken sandwiches. And the high school principal said, no, you can't do that. Chick-fil-A is not allowed on our campus. Someone might be offended at the sight of a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Now, brothers and sisters, I ask you, who, pray tell, could be offended by a plump, juicy chicken breast tucked between two hot buttered buns? Who, pray tell? Ronald Reagan, one of the great heroes of the faith. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to stand at the Reagan Ranch in this beautiful vista Ronald Reagan, they said, used to come and would sit at this spot and pray and read his Bible, this great man of God who led our nation. In the 1970s, Ronald Reagan had a radio program. And one day he told the story about what happened when the Soviets invaded Ukraine. Ukrainians, of course, they're in the news again, a very religious people, Christian people, and they love singing Christmas carols, love singing carols. One of their favorite was Silent Night. When the Soviets came in, they outlawed the singing of those carols. And yet, young Ukrainians, your age, rebelled. They refused to stop singing those Christmas carols. And every holiday season, they would take to the streets, and there would be roaming gangs of Christmas carolers singing Joy to the World and the First Noel and Silent Night. And the Soviets, they would come and they would beat these young people, and they would throw them in jail for singing Christmas carols. But they wouldn't stop. So the Soviets came up with an idea. Well, if they're not going to stop singing the carols, we got to do something. So the Soviets decided to rewrite the lyrics. So they took out Silent Night, for example, and they rewrote all the religious lyrics to Silent Night. And it became a secular song. Took out Jesus and Mary, and the whole 9 yards. Last Christmas, I received an email from a father in Long Island, New York. He says, Mr. Starnes, we just returned from our child's public school holiday performance. And it was a lovely performance. The children sang beautifully. But many of us were very disturbed when the children began singing Silent Night. And they realized that this public school in Long Island, New York, had taken out every reference to Jesus, every reference to Mary, just like the Soviets did. Something to think about. But it's not just the military, and it's not just the public schools, also happening in our business community, where those who preach tolerance and diversity are in fact the least tolerant and diverse of all. A Human Rights Commission in Lexington, Kentucky, told the owner of a Christian t-shirt company that he had to go to diversity training because he refused to make t-shirts for a gay pride event. Aaron and Melissa Klein, good friends of mine now, they run a bakery out on the West Coast. They have 3 young little kids. They run a mom and pop shop, Sweet Cakes by Melissa. She makes wedding cakes and cookies and things like that. Well, one day, a gay couple came in and said, hey, we want you to make a wedding cake for us. And they said, you know what? We can't do that. That would go against what we believe. But we do know some folks who could help you. Well, that couple immediately filed a civil rights complaint against Aaron and Melissa Klein. And the bakers came under fierce assault. They received death threats. People threatened to kill their little children simply because they held to their religious beliefs. It got so bad that the Kleins had to shut down their retail shop, and now Melissa makes those cakes out of her home. Aaron had to take a job picking up garbage so that he could pay the bills. I said, Aaron, why didn't you just make the cake? He says, Todd, I can't disobey God. You know, sometimes there's a price to pay for taking a stand, isn't there? You know, I want to go back for just a moment to that military, because there was something else that disturbed me about what's happening, and I think this really kind of flavors everything that we're hearing today. I broke a story that is just almost, it seems impossible to believe. But members of the United States military were being taught in diversity training sessions about religious intolerance. And they mentioned religious extremism, and they gave some examples of religious extremism: Hamas and Al Qaeda. You know the groups. But then they also said this: that here in America, the biggest threats to religious extremism are Roman Catholics and evangelical Christians. Just think about that for a moment. They're teaching these young 17, 18, 19-year-old soldiers that what's happening here at Truett-McConnell College is an act of religious extremism akin to Al Qaeda. This is happening in our country. You say, well, Todd, how do you know that? Because one of the soldiers who was in the training briefing sent me the PowerPoint demonstration, and we published the entire thing. You know, we mentioned the Atlanta Fire Chief, Kelvin Cochran, just a few moments ago. One of the things that I really appreciated was the executive director of the Georgia Baptist Convention, Dr. Robert White. And he took a great stand because, sadly, many of our churches have chosen to remain silent in this fight on religious liberty, but not Dr. White. I interviewed him for Fox News, and I said, Dr. White, when do you think the time is going to come for Christians to take a stand, a public stand? And he said, that time has long passed. The time is now. Many churches, though, in their quest to become culturally relevant, have become spiritually irrelevant. And that's the problem, my friends, because if we don't stand for religious liberty, no one else will. You know, I want to tell you about what happened in Houston, Texas. A group of pastors were preaching, and they got served subpoenas by the mayor of Houston, Texas, an openly lesbian woman. She demanded to know the contents of those sermons and all correspondence those pastors had. I told the story of the Houston Five as they came to be known. Evangelical Christian pastors, our brothers and sisters in the Lord. And those pastors, when they were served with those warrants, those subpoenas, they said, we will not comply. And I want to tell you something here. We need more pastors like the Houston Five. I remember I went down there and those pastors were refusing to honor those subpoenas under the threat of possible jail. I went down there to cover that story, and the only thing I brought with me was a toothbrush because I was willing to stand in those jails, in county lockup with those pastors if need be. And praise the Lord, thousands and thousands of believers in Houston, Texas rose up and said, enough, enough. The outcry was so great that the city backed down. Why? Because Christians took a stand. You know, the question is, what are we going to do about this? We know that the Internal Revenue Service went after Billy Graham. They audited America's pastor, Billy Graham. If they're going to go after Billy Graham, they're going to go after all the rest of us. I mean, we're all sinners saved by grace, but we're talking about Billy Graham. You know, our government ordered pro-life groups to turn over the contents of their prayers. So my question is this morning, what are we going to do about it? Ronald Reagan said we're just one generation away from losing it all. Well, I grew up in the Breakfast Club generation. The only thing our generation provided the country was parachute pants. That's about it. We dropped the ball. But not this generation. Something is happening with this generation that's attending school here at Truett-McConnell College right here and right now. And I believe that out of this generation, God is going to raise up the next Billy Graham and Billy Sunday and W.A. Criswell. I believe that God is going to raise up new champions for Christ, young men and women who are unashamed of the gospel message. And I want to tell you about one of those in closing this morning. A young man by the name of Roy Costner, 18 years old, from Liberty, South Carolina. Roy is a Southern Baptist, and his father is a Southern Baptist youth minister. Roy was named the valedictorian of his class. He was called to the principal's office one day, and they said, Roy, congratulations, you're the smartest kid in the school. Well, obviously, he was a Baptist. And they said, you get to deliver the valedictory address. They said, but Roy, you got to turn that address, you got to turn your speech into us because we have to take a look at it. Well, it's my understanding that 5 educators looked at Roy's speech. And when Roy got his speech back, something very interesting happened. They took out every reference to Jesus. They took out every reference Roy made to God. They took out every reference he made about his church. And they took out every reference that he made to the Bible. Well, Roy was perplexed because he knew this was the speech that God had laid on his heart to deliver to the graduating class. So he went to go talk to his dad about it. Dad, what do I do? And like a good Southern Baptist youth pastor, he said, son, you got to go talk to the senior pastor about that. And so, so he did, and they prayed, and graduation day came around. Now, these educators were not to be fooled. They refused to let Roy walk onto the stage with anything in his hands. They put that speech, that government-approved speech, right here on the platform. So Roy got up there, and he looked out there. There was a big crowd. His mom and his daddy were there, and grandparents and the graduating class, and all those educators. And Roy told me that at that very moment there was a stirring in his soul. And Roy Costner, an 18-year-old Southern Baptist boy, took that government-approved speech in his hands, and he lifted it into the air like this, and he tore it in half. And in an act of civil disobedience in Liberty, South Carolina, he asked the audience to rise to their feet, and the following words came out of his mouth: "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Roy Costner, a Southern Baptist, took a stand. And so, my fellow brothers and sisters, I want to ask you this morning here in this place, who among you is willing to take a stand with the Roy Costners of the world? Who among you is willing to stand in the face of adversity and persecution? You know, they may demand to know the contents of our prayers. They may demand to shut down our bakeries. They may try to silence our voices, but we will not be silenced. And we will not be intimidated. A Chicago pastor put it like this: we don't bow down to the Democratic donkey, and we don't bow down to the Republican elephant. We bow down to the Lion of Judah, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And this is why I wrote God Bless America, the evidence that demands a verdict, so that Americans, so that we as brothers and sisters can see what's happening in our country, and so that we can stand together and say, never again. Now, friends, I know things may appear to be hopeless, but hope is not lost, because we know that true hope and change cannot be found in the halls of Congress. True hope and change cannot be found at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. True hope and change can only be found at the cross of Calvary and a life changed by the redeeming blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. In closing, I remember a Bible verse I learned a long time ago from the Old Testament. It's in the book of Habakkuk. Well, they were going through a rough time, kind of like what we're going through right now. But here's what Habakkuk wrote. You know what? And I'm paraphrasing here. Yeah, there's no Gatorade in the refrigerator, and there aren't any Nutter Butters up in the cabinet. But it's all right. It's going to be okay. You know what Habakkuk says? The sovereign Lord is my strength. And he makes my feet like the feet of the deer. And he enables me to go onto the high places. You know, as I was driving up, I thought I caught a glimpse of a deer out in the woods. Interesting creatures, deer. You know, my daddy used to take me out hunting, and deer are very graceful creatures. There's a lot of stuff on the floor of that forest. You know, the downed trees and the limbs and the brush, a lot of stuff that you get caught up in. But the deer, it's amazing. They're just graceful. They're able to leap over all of that stuff that, boy, if I went out there, I'd just fall flat on my face. We'd get tangled up in all that stuff, wouldn't we? It's real easy to get tangled up in the mess that's politics and the mess of the culture. It's real easy to do. But if we set our eyes on Jesus, he promises us that he'll make our feet like the feet of the deer. And he'll pick us up, and he'll take us up to the high place, like the North Georgia mountains, where Truett-McConnell is right here in this place. So my call to you comes from a great hymn writer. Rise up, O men of God. Rise up, O women of God. And let the cry go out from the North Georgia mountains to the concrete canyons of New York City that these United States are still, and may they always be, one nation under God. Thank you very much.